Okay, can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, or say in the chat that you can hear me. Okay. Okay, Pastor Sue, can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Good greetings and welcome to the premiere live broadcast of Triumphant Thursdays with yours truly, Chaplain PJ. Our purpose is to bring consciousness on various subjects that impact and intersect with global peoples. Our goal is that you will be empowered to answer the call to action, thereby having an opportunity to experience your own triumphant Thursdays. Our subject tonight is the power of the black dollar in response to the post-Blackout Day, July 7th, 2020. We're getting an early start, and we will do this again the week of July 7th, 2020, and we will also read the post in just a minute. I anticipate that this will be a great evening with our guest, Mrs. Gwendolyn Davis Bodiford, and her oldest son, Mr. Raushawn Bodiford. Before bringing them on, we invite you to share with your friends and put your questions and make your comments in the chat room. Okay, and here they are. Mrs. Gwendolyn Bodiford and her son, Raushawn. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And welcome to Triumphant Thursdays with yours truly, Chaplain PJ. So let's start out with you introducing yourself. I'll share with the audience that Sister Gwendolyn and I are sorority sisters.
Absolutely.
And we are both the family. We are all in the greater Lansing area. And so I'm going to ask them, and Sister Gwendolyn was the first person who sent me the announcement for the Blackout Day, July the 7th. And if you would like to talk a little bit more about yourself, we would love to hear more about you. And then we're going to ask your son to tell a little bit about himself.
All right. Well, first of all, let me say greetings to everyone and God bless. I'm a 37-year educator, administrator with the Lansing Public Schools. I'm a mother of 2, grandmother of 8, and attend Trinity African Methodist Episcopal Church here in Lansing. I'm so tuned in to young people and youth that even in my retirement time, I try and find ways to impact my community. And when I saw the text come across my phone about Blackout 2020, it was intriguing, and I felt like this is something that I can do. I may not be able to get out and go down to the Capitol and hold up a sign or whatever, but I know that I have power, and I just had to figure out which one of my powers I was going to use and how to use it. And when the text came through, it's an excellent opportunity to get involved with the community, to teach my sons, to teach my grandchildren how to become an active part of your community and let your voice be heard. I mean, we always talk about let your voice be heard at the voting ballot, but right now, before the ballots come out, we have an opportunity to be heard. So we need to speak out loud and clear. So that's how I got involved with this, and I appreciate you seeing the need and seeing the value behind the blackout.
Yes, very good. Okay, Brother
My name is Raushawn Bodiford. That's my mama. uh, I've been in the Lansing area my whole life, 4 years now.
Yeah.
I work with the state of Michigan. I do utility regulation. But I guess what brought me to this point was just kind of the last few years I've been learning about Black people. And I have come to realize that one of the biggest keys to getting Black people sufficient in this country is to establish an economic base in this country, which we kind of don't have. We just got money that comes in and goes out. So I am more than happy to teach my children how to speak with their dollars.
Right.
And I think the blackout, we had a little mini one not too long ago. But I think the blackout on the 7th and the week leading up to the 7th and any other day after that we do it will help just educate our people about indeed what kind of power our dollars have. We have a lot of dollars. We don't usually use them together to make a statement. So I look forward to the 7th to see what kind of statement we can make.
Right.
Indeed. Would you like for me to read, or do you have in front of you the actual post? Do either of you have in front of you the actual post?
I believe I have it here. Let me see.
Okay. Wonderful.
Well, I have a post. How about that?
Okay.
Blackout Day, July 7th, 2020. I don't know if it's possible for me to share my screen. I might just be able to bring it up with everybody here.
And while he's bringing that up, I want to make note, and I shared this with Sister Gwendolyn the other day, that the American Psychiatric Association has declared that we are living in a racism pandemic.
Right.
And one of the questions that I would like to put forth to both of you and to the listening audience is, how will the July 7th event affect the racism pandemic? So
I don't know if you guys can see what's up on my screen now. Am I sharing?
no, we cannot see it. So if you'll read it.
All right. So here we go. We got Blackout Day, July 7th, 2020.
Put that back up. Put that back up. I just saw something. Maybe we can read it. If I bring it into the room with us.
All right.
Uh-oh. There you go.
There it is.
All right. So you can see it. If you'd like, you may also read it, Brother Rashad.
Yeah.
Raushawn.
This is a call to action. Blackout Day, July 7th, 2020. This is a call to action. We need one day of solidarity in America when not one Black person in America spends $1. This includes Africans, Native Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanics, all people of color. Together, we have $3.9 trillion in economic spending power. That's 684,931,506.80 it's going to cost per day next time a person of color gets shot. We will call it Blackout Day 2020. So July 7th, 2020, please spread the message and let's show real action that they fear.
Excellent.
And then the hashtag Blackout Day 2020.
Excellent.
And I might add that if the people who are listening are interested, if you go to blackoutday.org, you can register. So you actually become a part of a cohesive group that's forming.
And if you would please repeat that, I think our administrator might be able to get that on the screen.
Blackoutday.org.
blackoutday.org.
Yes.
Blackoutday.org. You were saying earlier in the conversation when we did our run the other day, had a conversation the other day, that you were particularly interested in getting the support of African Americans, Brother Raushawn, that while it is important to include all people of color, that that most of the murders, most of the police brutalities are being forced on Black people. And I don't know that many of us have been taught to invest. If we have grown up in a church, most of us have been taught to tithe, but we haven't been taught to invest. Neither have we been taught to save. And many of us, it looks like, according to the lineup of people in Atlanta when the tennis shoes came out a few weeks ago, were there without their mask on, without gloves. And so there seems to not be a sense of how we need to care for ourselves, how we need to use our money. And so if you could say a little bit more that perhaps would encourage particularly your generation and the millennials, and even my generation, the baby boomers. And thank you, Wilma Brooks Amy, who is listening from Atlanta, Georgia, from your family tree, from my family tree.
All right.
Thank you, Wilma Brooks Amy. Glad to have you. Okay, Brother Bodiford.
I think what you're speaking to is trying to move Black people from a mindset of consumerism to, and I just a preface before I start speaking, I've done some studying and some research. A lot of what I'm going to say, especially about Black economics and Black economic empowerment, comes from Dr. Claude Anderson, who has a series called Powernomics and a philosophy that is quite engaging, and it makes a lot of sense. It speaks to, first, the development of community, so that Black people have a territory, a place, a space that is their own. And then the next step, which I think what you're trying to allude to, is Black people in this country have to embrace ownership. We don't own anything. Therefore, all the dollars we get go out to somebody else who owns things.
That's right.
So we cannot circulate dollars within the Black community. There is no Black community to circulate the dollars. That's why you have to have that community. That's the market. That's how you trap the dollars. You circulate them within that community. Those dollars can build upon themselves and develop things that empower Black communities. And then you move on from there. There's other hierarchies. And if I can just share the screen one more time, I'll share with you guys Dr. Claude Anderson's website. You guys can go check out Powernomics for yourself. But it is very, very informative, and I think it's a good plan to try and get us moving in the right direction, at least economically.
Okay.
So that's it, powernomics.com. You can check out on YouTube his free Breakfast Club interview, which is a really good primer into what his system and talks are about. But he's a PhD in education. And so he has a very unique, straightforward way of teaching that I think is also effective and that we need to hear. As far as not sugarcoating where we are as a people economically in this country. And I think the one thing that we didn't get when we got to this country. And obviously we had slavery, Jim Crow and all that. They tried to keep education. They tried to keep knowledge from us. What we did not develop as a people was the ability to own and hold and pass on wealth and those kind of things. And that has to start somewhere. So if we don't start it, at least we can tell somebody else how to start it. That's what I'm here for tonight. I don't have a lot of wealth to pass on right now, but I do have knowledge. And I can point other people to knowledge so that we can start to grow together.
One of the things that you have pointed out is that it's never too late. It is never too late. You're never too old and you're never too young to start understanding the dollar. I'm taking a course in one of the first in I Deserve to Be Rich. And one of the things that has come up in this course is that we have been taught that the love of money, for example, Brother Rashad, you want to put yourself on mute? That the love of money is the root of all evil. And the person that was talking about this made the point is that money doesn't go where it is not welcomed. Money doesn't go, doesn't stay where it has not been invited. And if we, when we preach, teach, and believe that mindset, that the root of all evil is money, then the likelihood is we're not going to have any money. And the other thing observation that I wanted to make is, where is the voice of the Black church? And when I ask that question, I'm talking about the mega Black churches. And when I asked that question, it was pointed out to me that when former President Bush, George Bush, young Bush, initiated the faith initiatives, that these mega churches are now beholding if they bought into the faith-based initiatives, and therefore cannot speak on a political issue, at least not to the general public. Had you heard that? Had either one of you heard that? Has anyone listening? I
think that when you speak to that, you're only speaking to a certain percentage of the people who are in churches. Most churches are not mega churches.
Correct.
AME churches have an AME leadership is in Washington, D.C. right now. Mm-hmm. There are always and has always been bishops and ministers who are speaking to the needs of the people, who are speaking to the powers that be, and try and rally the people who are in the churches to do different things to make things happen. And I just want to back up just a tad bit.
Please do.
And do your research. When after Jim Crow and Blacks started moving across the United States, where Black people came together as a community, they had economic power bases.
Yes, they did.
They had the grocery stores. They had the beauty shops. They had the all those things that make communities happen, because they provided those services for the people in that community.
Sure.
We started breaking down when people started wanting more, and instead of taking the community with you, you went off to the suburbs or wherever on your own, because then you made it. Okay. So it's not that wasn't taught. My grandfather was in Texas, and after he had won his freedom and whatever else, he worked and worked and worked until he was able to buy land. And he left and went across to Louisiana and in Florida and picked up other Black people who were enslaved and whatever else, brought them to Texas. They worked with and for him. He provided services for the community. And we're talking about rural. We're not talking about Houston or Dallas, rural Texas. And there was a sense of community and teaching that went on there. The grandparents on the other side of the family, the Bodifords, unheard of in Alabama. Raushawn's grandfather sat on the board of directors for a bank in Luverne, Alabama. And we're talking about back in the day. We're talking about, World War II. We're talking early on. So it's been lost as time has come on. Well, it wasn't that it wasn't there.
I know with the unrest and the re-education of America, we've seen there have been Black enclaves in the past that have been dismantled through means not of our own. So there has been. And I want to double back to what you said we were talking about in the run up to this talk tonight. I really, really want to focus on talking to and about Black people. I know the call is out for everyone, and everyone is welcome to join. However, we have to have an agenda of our own. We have to embrace an agenda. We have to get together as a Black people. You coalesce around the thing that makes us the same, just like everybody else coalesces around things that make them the same to develop an economic power base. We have to do that too, as Black people, not as people of color, not as the Kumbaya, we united, everybody unity coalition. We have to do this as Black people.
Yes.
Because the simple fact of the matter is the Black people have been catching the hell. And we've caught it for 400 and some years, and we've caught the worst of it.
Yes.
So we have to start doing something for ourselves. And it's not like you don't have to be ashamed to speak for Black people and speak about Black people and want good things for Black people and have agendas for Black people. Everyone else does.
That's right.
And there are agendas for LGBTQIA. There are agendas for Hispanic Americans. Mm-hmm. There are agendas. We don't have an agenda. We have nothing. We haven't demanded anything. We haven't said, hey, government, can we get an agenda too? So we either got to do it ourselves or we got to demand that somebody else does it. But we have to do something for ourselves.
Well, that was one of the primary reasons Blackout Day 2020 came about, was to unify and to bring Black people together to realize that they do have a voice, they do have power, but they have it when they are together. Your $1 is hardly a squeak. All of our dollars really makes a sound. So I think that initiatives such as this is the stepping stone for unifying and bringing people together. Whereas before, you're right, they want to kind of whitewash all the things that come down the pike. And you say Black this, they say, well, it's nice to be, but no, you do. You have to stand up. You have to be Black and be proud to be Black in all your Blackness, and have the platforms organized, have them ready, and get people educated in it. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I wanted to make sure that we brought up this evening was the fact that Blackout Day 2020 that was put together by Calvin Martyr is different from, there was another Blackout Day. It was earlier. Okay. Mm-hmm. It came from some musicians, I believe, who had put that together. But this one is specifically for economics, to speak to economic power, to show put a show for economic power. And as we're doing that, we need to be sure that we're telling people that that's what that's for. And one of the things that makes it so much easier for people to understand, whether it's baby boomers, millennials, I don't care, is that if you have an agenda and you have the information there, and you not only share the information, but you give them background to that information, so everyone can get up to the same level in terms of knowledge, and can then say, this is where my strength lies. This is what I can do. This is what I'm comfortable with. And when you do that, you don't have, you're less likely to have outside factions, because they're talking about, well, when they're doing this, we get, for the protests and whatnot, you get anti-Christ people, you get the white supremacists, they come out, and then there's violence because they instigate. If you know who you are and what you're standing for, you can thwart those kinds of things, because you have more power when you stand on your power base, as opposed to letting somebody push you in the direction that they want to make it, so because it's watering down what we do. We are somebody, we have power, we have strength. We need to stand up for that. We need to be unified behind that. And I think that this movement, this method is one way of doing it. And we talked about in our trial run of this program, we talked about, well, it's not the first time. Yeah, they had boycotts before, but the boycotts that, let's take the one in Alabama, the bus, it worked because 90% of the people who were using the bus system were Black people.
Right.
All of them said, we're not going to use it. Okay. That's when it made a noise. That's when it made sense. It wasn't some of them saying, well, but I've got to walk too far. Everybody in that community came together and said, I'll give you a ride, grandma, sister, whomever else, but we're not using this system. We're not using this bus system. We're not doing it till we are heard. And that's what we have to do with this economic move here, is we have to come together. And if you just have to go out and buy something on July 7th, make sure it's from a Black-owned business, because we don't have a lot of them, but we do have them right across the board for everything that you would need for that. Plan ahead. Yes. Be sure that you're going to be committed to this. Make sure that this is something that you're going to do, and then you don't have to be, hung out there saying, well, I got to have some bread. Plan,
yeah. When you were talking earlier, I had forgotten about that time in our life when we had our own. I grew up in a neighborhood where we had that corner grocery store owned by a Black couple. Right. And a block away there was a Dairy Queen. That's not what it was called. It was an ice cream place. Owned by a Black man, and a little bit further down the road there was a Black-owned bar. So yeah, you are correct, and we did move away from that when we arrived, quote unquote, when we arrived.
Right.
Well, and you know what? I've heard a number of Black educators mention this very phenomenon. They said, when I was coming up in the 50s, 60s, we had our own neighborhoods. Grocery store, from everything from grocery stores to banks. So you'd have blocks and blocks that were all Black owned and Black supported. And this is a very, very unpopular opinion. During the civil rights movement, which did so much for Black people to just gain some kind of political equality and whatnot, we pushed to integrate. We pushed to integrate buses. We pushed to integrate schools. We pushed to integrate neighborhoods. When you integrate, you destroy the power base of a community.
Absolutely.
Everybody leaves off. They go here, they go there. We don't own anything in the suburbs. We don't,
very true.
We didn't own integrated bus lines. All the bus lines that got the integrated traffic was owned by somebody else. So why Black bus lines now? oh, now we can go to the school with the white kids. We don't need that bus line.
Sure. Yeah,
Right.
we did. We kind of missed up.
We fought to integrate and sit at lunch counters where we can't even afford the food and stuff. We got to reverse that trend and look at trying to own.
Yes, that is so very, very true. So how do we reach the population of African Americans who have moved into the suburbs, who have the Bentleys and have bought the Bentleys from places that they don't own, or the Chevys or the Volkswagen or whatever it is that they have bought? How do we reach the millennials who do not have a history of that we have, having grown up in neighborhoods that where we had our own businesses, and especially church and funeral homes, and the mom and pop stores, very popular in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. That we didn't start, I suppose, abandoning, for lack of a better word, our own communities until the 80s.
Right. Well, I guess if you want to try and reach somebody who doesn't know, the first thing to do is to let them know. So if you have stories that you can pass on, and you can tell a story about your community when Black people had something and how good it was and how harmonious and how much love there was and how everybody supported everybody, and you can pass on that emotion and that information to somebody who doesn't know, that's the start. We have done it before. We can do it again. Black people gonna be here forever. So let's get started.
I think
I like your attitude.
he's very enthusiastic.
Yes, he is.
I think that it's critical. We have so much. I mean, we're just so rich that it gets put on the back burner because of some of the hype from media. And only now, when we're in, first of all, the medical pandemic,
yes,
where everybody is affected, and then you have to stay wherever, and then now you want to reach out, and when you reach out, I've noticed, and this is not to cut anybody down, but I've noticed the Black artists and whatnot are coming out as Black artists, and they're saying, yeah, I'm staying in and I'm doing whatever else, but I want to reach out to my people. Okay, it's the same thing, people. It's exactly the same thing. A racial pandemic is systemic. Number one, when I was a young teacher, I have such a passion for youth, and I would tell the young Black athletes who were going to whatever high school, I said, they're feeding the little white girls to you. They're feeding them to you. So then you grow up and you think in order to have somebody and something, it's got to be like that. You've got a rich history of Black females, young Black females then and older now, who have much to give, but who are looked upon as not appealing because it wasn't progressive enough. So you asked about, in the beginning, you asked about the racial pandemic. We've got a lot of cleaning up to do our own selves. You look in that mirror and you've got your young granddaughter or your young son or daughter next to you. What do you have them to see? One of the things I really love, and one day we'll have my younger sister on this program. There is so much more Black literature and books out for the young people now. My hair. This is my hair. And nobody else has hair like me. And having them become enamored with their own self and all of the aspects of them being Black, what it means to be Black. So There's just so many pieces to this. You can't keep reaching into the air. I think it's wonderful that we have now a focus, and it's economic. And from that, we can keep on moving forward, because to be the truth be told, our education system, and people are seeing that now. That's why they're tearing down monuments and whatnot, because the education system was not holistic. It wasn't true, and now when the truth is coming out, everyone, not just one group of people, but everyone is seeing, that wasn't nothing, but that's a lie.
Mhm.
I refuse to live a lie any longer. So that's why these things are happening, because the truth is coming to light. It can't bury it. It's coming to light.
Yes, it
And when
is.
it comes out, people start responding to it. So, and I know I kind of got off on a tangent there, but that's one of my pet peeves, is
No,
that
it's good.
education is not the way it should be. And you're right. When we did segregation, desegregation, we put our kids in those schools, they still wasn't teaching you anything
Right.
that you really needed to know.
Yes.
And that's where we need to be now. So those people who are out there now, if you're a doctor, if you're an accountant, if you work for the state, whatever you're doing, if you're a baker, grab a younger person, teach them,
Mentor.
teach them what needs to be. How do you even start a business?
Correct.
What's behind it? What are the ideologies? What do you have to have in place? Those are all training things that need to be taught. And don't wait on somebody else to do it. You do it. You grab a young person and you do it.
Yes.
So I agree with Raushawn, because, well, he's got the wealth of my life, and my grandkids there, both my sons. And I want my grandkids to grow up with a sense of responsibility, not only for themselves, but for their community, with a sense of knowing that they have power, that they are somebody, that their voice can and will be heard. All they have to do is make it heard.
Yes.
And so I'm really adamant about that.
And I want to encourage Raushawn also. He made the statement that he doesn't have a lot of money. Well, actually, you're a millionaire. You just have to start saying that, and saying it with emotion, and saying it with feeling, because that's what makes things come to you, is your feeling. You got to say, I may not have it now, but it's on the way. It's on the way.
And you know what? That's good advice for those that are in the pursuit of increasing their wealth. I really am not. I do want to help Black people, so I'll do what I can do to help.
Yes.
If that means giving whatever money I need to give, that's fine. But I really just want us to know we have the power. We've done it before. We can do it again. All we got to do is come together. That's it. That's all we have. You see what happens when we come together in the street.
They're talking about it. They're talking about it in Germany, in Italy, in London, in Iran. They're talking about what's going on here, the racial pandemic. Okay, so you can be heard not just in your neighborhood. You can be heard around the world. Around the world. And there is a question on the chat line about it says, speak to the impact of the so-called war on drugs and how it might have an impact have had an impact on the economic stability of the Black community.
I can't see it, but please.
That's it's off on the side to the chat room.
Yes.
I'm assuming that's for us. Okay.
Yeah. Please repeat the question.
Okay, I'll just read it. Can Chaplain PJ or Miss Gwendolyn speak to the impact the so-called war on drugs might have had on the economic stability of the Black community?
All right, Miss Gwendolyn.
I don't think so. I don't know. I'm not. That's not my area of expertise. I can say that war on drugs. Who has the most money for drugs, and where do they come from? and they come into this country, it's not Black people.
That is correct.
Okay, so the misnomer is that you see a brother who's blinged out or whatever else, and he's got to be into drugs and whatever else. Well, there's somebody higher than him, got more money than him. So, and he's not Black. So I don't. That's about the most I can speak to that.
I know my name wasn't included in the questionnaire, but I've done a little bit of research myself, and you guys out there in the public, you can do the same research I've done because it's now declassified. But the war on drugs was actually an FBI initiative, and it was put together to destroy Black men in particular, along with some other factions that they thought were politically threatening. But that information is, you can Google that. So the impact is as they expected it to be. They took the bread earners. Yeah, they took the bread earners out of households, out of families, so that they couldn't, the males could not go out, make a living for their family. They were incarcerated.
Yes.
So the impact was as expected. And now, as you can see, there really isn't a war on drugs, because now you can make $1 billion in the marijuana industry. They just had to do what they had to do first. So they got that out of the way, and then they went in to make money.
This whole idea of destroying the Black family, and more specifically the Black man, goes back to the enslavement of Black people, stripping us of our culture, our language, our name. I think one of the most powerful movies that I have ever, or documentaries that I have ever witnessed was, oh, he's dead now, Roots. Was that not the name of it?
Alex. Mm-hmm.
Alex Haley. And I think that we ought to do that more. We ought to review that. That should be on main television programs from time to time, for the entire community to see how we were stripped of our dignity. Our women were raped by the slave holders. And we still have that breakout. People don't like to hear me say it, but we still have the field, the workers, and the house, the perpetrators, the Negro. And so much of the book, Netflix, for an example, is doing a whole series on Black writers and Black movies. And the observation has been made in the chat room that slavery has not ended. It just changed locations, or as one of my late judges used to say, different day, same plantation. And so the war on drugs is code for let's get more of the cocaine and more of the particularly more of the cocaine and the heroin in the Black community, in the military. They don't have a right to serve, so it's also dumped into the military, and many of our service members are addicted. And so that's what we will say on that, is that when Black-owned businesses begin to fail. Well, I think that alone, what do you have to say about that, Brother Rashad?
I don't necessarily think that the war on drugs and the decline in Black-owned businesses are linked. At least I haven't seen anything that would suggest that to me. Like I mentioned before, the decline of the Black-owned business came when Black people lost their economic market. They could no longer capture their economic market. Their communities disbanded because of integration. So they went elsewhere just to get a piece of the American pie, only to find out when they got out there they couldn't afford the American pie because they didn't have any strength in numbers.
And then you can't come back to where you were, to where the community was first.
Correct.
Because that now has become prime property, and so
Correct.
It's scooped up, and you can't come back. You can't come back in there because now it's owned by other people. And so you've lost your footprint. You've lost your foothold for that community, for that segment of the community.
And just before I forget, because there's a comment in the chat about slavery is not ended, it's just changed locations. I'm gonna give another shout out to Dr. Claude Anderson, because it's something that came as a revelation to me when he said it. Black people's existence in this country has always been about white unearned income. When
About
they brought us
white
over, white unearned income.
Okay.
When they brought us over here, it was to work their field so that they could get paid.
Okay.
When they put us in jail, they do that so they can get $80,000 per prisoner for their private prison so that they can make money.
Okay.
So it hasn't changed at all. It's all about how can we make money from these people, their work, their toil, their labor. How can we make unearned income from that? And if you just do me a favor and just try to frame everything you see in that framework and tell me if it doesn't work for you.
Okay. Follow the money. It's not coming from us.
Absolutely.
Which
And that's
is
the
why-
number one. That's the number one lesson tonight.
Right.
Money speaks even louder than my voice.
Say
I
it.
can go out there yelling. I can go out there and yell in the street and not speak as loud as my dollars.
Right.
And that's and bringing it back home. That's
Yeah.
why July 7th is so important. Don't just poo-poo it off and say, well, my little few dollars is not going to mean anything. You're right, by yourself, but grab that neighbor right next door. Grab your friend across town. Call your church members, all on the auxiliary. Go to the girl when you go girls' night out. Call the girls and say, hey, come on over to my house. We're not spending any money today, okay? Because power comes from the numbers.
Absolutely.
It comes from the numbers.
I think what I'm going to try and do in the time we have between now and then is I will try and compile some lists, at least locally here, of Black-owned businesses,
Excellent.
things like that in the local area, so that if you find yourself in a bind and you have to go out on that day and purchase something, you can do that and still join the movement. And second, if you're out and you see somebody else not joining the movement, you can educate them. Hey, you know what? You can pick that toilet paper up right down so and such a street or wherever at the local market owned by so and such. Pick up 2 rolls. You only need one for the day. You can go get it at Walmart tomorrow if you want. But today, go down there and get it.
That was a good point that I did miss. Actually, Calvin is compiling a list across the nation, in the different areas, and that's why registering is so important. A compiling list of Black-owned businesses, everything from groceries to car shops to auto shops to whatever else, for those people who need those services and need them on that day or whatever else. And then they're looking to do this again in the future, not so far off future, and have it organized even tighter, and maybe it'll last longer than just one day. It may last 2 days, a week, or whatever. But the importance is, if we all take a stand, and on this July 7th, don't go out and make purchases, period, so that we can actually see the power behind our dollars, hear our voices through what's going to be picked up in the media and whatever else. that's when the next time we do it, it'll even be bigger and it'll even be better. We do have to take a stand, and when we do that, stand strong.
And the next time, as the Lord wills, will be July the 2nd. Thursday, July the 2nd. I'm going to invite you to invite your sister. And Brother Raushawn, whatever you have collected by then, we want to make that information available to the greater Lansing community. The time has run away. We are in the last 7 minutes of the broadcast. One of the questions that I initially had, and before I forget, we want to add to our conversation next time, cradle to prison pipeline. But in terms of how Black people are being used to make the empire richer. Yeah. And how we can use our own Black dollars to garner the attention of the empire by participating in the July 7th blackout. If you could put that back up for us, please, Pastor Sue. Yes. So we want to invite, as we close down, we want you to invite your sister, and you and I can have conversation about that.
Absolutely.
And the list, as if you can just generate as much of a list as possible. And as we are getting toward the end, I want to thank Mrs. Gwendolyn Davis Bodiford and her oldest son, Mr. Raushawn D. Bodiford. We also want to thank our incredible administrator behind the scenes, Pastor Sue Wibley of Kara, Kara Solutions.
Yeah, them graphics is fire.
Huh?
I said those graphics are fire.
Yes, and she is fire. She's absolutely amazing. She has put all of this together. I am so excited. I can barely stay in my skin. Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me. Before we get off, I have one plug, if you'll allow me.
Please.
Okay. We won't be back on before Father's Day comes around. And people are always bashing Black men and Black fathers. Reach out and lift some up, because they get bashed around enough without us taking up a hand against them. We have some wonderful, wonderful Black men as fathers, as uncles, as role models, as leaders. Yeah. And I'm proud to have raised some. I'm proud to live with one and have been raised by one. So reach out and touch a Black man. Yes. And let them know that, hey, you're all that we need, and we will move forward and up.
Yes.
With
yes.
you.
This coming Father's Day, it will be 33 years since Dad escaped the Earth suit.
Okay.
and yet he was an incredible dad. He made certain that we had a roof over our head. Absolutely. He made certain that there was food on the table. He made certain that there was clothing on our backs. He made certain that Mom had an automobile so that she could get back and forward to church and back and forward to work as she served as what we today call housekeepers. And I had 3 incredible brothers, and who all of whom are deceased, but you are correct. We must lift up Black men in general, and specifically Black fathers. And I say in advance to you, Mr. Rashad, Happy Father's Day. And for the last 3 minutes, I want to put a shout out for the Greater Lansing NAACP And we invite those of you who are in the city of Lansing to join the Lansing chapter. And for those of you who are listening all around the country, that you would join the local United Church of Christ. Now, wouldn't I say that? The local chapters of the NAACP. And we also want to announce next week's program. The subject is going to be domestic violence. And the person that will be on the show is a survivor of domestic violence, and she has written a book that we will also announce on the show. And if you would like to be on our show, if you have a topic that is of particular interest to you, if you would like to be our guest, by all means, email me at drpjanderson@spaceforgrace.org. To financially support Triumphant Thursdays, please give at your level of comfort at drpjanderson@spaceforgrace.org. We have a PayPal account, and I have no way of knowing how many are listening, but I want to thank those of you that made comments, and I want to thank my cousin, probably second cousin, Wilma Brooks Amy. And Sister Amy, I think that if you and I could have a conversation, I would be able to connect with the Brooks side of the family. I am planning to come to Atlanta in a couple of years, going to the Varner Plantation where my father grew up, to find out all about my history as the granddaughter of a slave. Again, thank you, Sister Gwendolyn. Thank you, Brother Raushawn. Thank you, Pastor Sue. And thank you to the listening audience. We will see you a week from tonight, 8:30 to 9:30, and spread the word. We'll be putting out announcements, and God bless you, each and every one. I love you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.